Okay, so again, chapter 7. Blessed are the poor in spirit, which already covered what that means. Today, the item, whoever exalts himself shall be humbled. Who's going to read?
Okay, I'm here, Elmo.
Okay, thank you, Sir Ryder.
At that time, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling on him to a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly, I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a greater millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea." Matthew.
Go ahead.
Okay. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. And he said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom." And Jesus answered, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?" He said to him, "We are able." He said to them, "You will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared for by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were indignant at the two brothers. But Jesus called to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Matthew.
Thank you. So we start on item 3. Only in the question itself, there is a connotation of pride in it because you see the superlative. Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Only by making this comparative approach, there is in itself a a degree of pride in itself, because it basically rejects the idea of equality. If I say that one is greater than the other, it's because there is no equality, right? And the teachings of Christ is exactly to eliminate those comparative approaches and say we are all equals in the eyes of God. So only by asking the question, who is the greatest in the kingdom of God, predisposes a degree of pride, of not understanding the teachings of Christ in the putting us all as equal, which require from Christ, as always, a lesson, and is always ready to provide a lesson. And to provide that lesson, he brings a small child, put them in the mirror and say that you must convert. You know, he used the word convert. Verily I say you that if you not convert, so it's saying that you have to unlearn this movement of pride and convert to the movement of humility, to be like a child and be small as a child, and to be as an open canvas as a child is, to be free of prejudice as a child is, By asking who is the greatest, you already predispose a degree of prejudice there. That is a level of those who are like this, like that are better. Those who are less deserving are lesser in the kingdom of heavens. And Christ again teaches everyone is equal in the eyes of God. And that would be pretty much the case of a child. That until we, the adults, we infected their minds with our prejudices, children by themselves do not carry it. Children by themselves would play with black, white, yellow, green kids who, regardless, would be open to learn things of Buddhism, of Judaism, of Islam, of whatever is taught to them, with a simple open minded to absorb as much lessons as they are able to do, which predisposes them to the risk of being guided in the wrong direction as well. And that is the responsibility of us adults to guide them into the right direction, of course. And then one mother again in the exercise of pride brings the two children and say, I want my children to be at your right and at your right and at your left side. This in itself is again a demonstration of our sense of pride. And again, I'm not condemning or accusing anyone. This is us. This is how we are. We are always putting ourselves in this comparative approach. Even if we consider ourselves lower than others, which very often happens, we are distancing ourselves from the principle that we are all equal, especially in the eyes of God, right? And this mother here is trying to put her kids at the right and left side of Christ. And Christ asked, I mean, do you know what you're asking? Have any idea what you're asking for? Do you think you can handle it? That is asking this direct to the children. No, can you handle what's coming for being with me? And the examples that we have, it's Paul of Tarsus, it's everyone who follow him, all the Christians being persecuted by, if not by the Romans, being persecuted by the Jews themselves. Do you know what you're asking me? Do you handle it? And they says, yes, we can handle it. And Christ kind of agree with them. Yeah, you will drink from my cup. And then there is a question that, or a statement that I do not understand. I looked to see if I got a meaning exact for that. Maybe we can discuss and somebody can help me when it says, but it will be for those for whom it has been prepared for my Father, that the decision of who will sit at his and left side is not Christ's decisions, but it is for those who have been prepared by our Father. Who are those? For the sake, I tried to figure out who that was, and I couldn't find who that would be. The only explanation that I come to myself does not pleases me is that it would be ourselves. The exercise of free will and our intelligence, we would place ourselves at the right or left side of Christ. But again, I'm not comfortable with that answer that I found for myself, and I might be the wrong one. And of course, and again, in an exercise of our pride, of our lack of humility, the disciples heard that and got kind of upset with the two brothers. You know, having heard this, the other 10 disciples were filled with indignation. Again, another exercise, another demonstration of our pride. Which those things are not placed here by chance. It's almost every action that we take would display who we really are. If you look carefully, if you read between the lines, is another demonstration of pride. Why did you get indignated by hearing that, if not by pride? And Christ again provides another lesson to us, right? The my book is quite different. Can I go back? Oh, now you're there. Because there is more words in this book than there is in ours.
Yes, yes, you're right, Elmo, because I have the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want me to read? You want me to read
No,
it?
no. Let's skip that. That's okay.
Okay. So
We
we're
know
going.
that the rules of the Gentiles, uh, Lord, it's over them, which in our book it says the princes of the nations rule over them. It's pretty much the same thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which tell us here that they are under the commands, they are under the governance of the earthly kings, and the Gentiles would be the Romans,
Okay. See, so
and they are under the
The,
authority. I'm sorry.
the difference is just the versions of the gospel, because this is the English standard version that was used in this translation, and I don't know the one that Edisei did, Fab did. I don't know which version they used. The new translation chose the most common used today version of the gospel. So this is not a translation of the French. This is a directly from the English standard version of the gospel.
okay.
Just to clarify what is the why is the difference. Okay?
Yeah, but the meaning is pretty much the same. It's saying that they being the two brothers are really under the governance of the humans' authorities. You know, the Gentiles pretty much being the Romans, but would not be the same with them. So God just bring consolation to the disciples by saying, "It shall not be the same among you." And then he comes with the lessons that those who wants to be the number one, to be a servant, just like Christ himself came himself not to be served, but to serve, and gives the greatest example himself when he put a tile puts a towel on his own waist and go to wash the feet of the disciples. And when Peter kind of rejects that idea, say, I'm the one who should be washing your feet, not you washing mine. And Christ tells him, if you do not let me wash your feet, you are not worth of me. That's the greatest example of humbleness, of servitude. That those that are with God, serving God, must serve God's creation and not to be expected to be served. The greatest example of humility is right then and there. So, all right. Comments? Does anybody want to make a comment on this? For those who are those who's been prepared by our Father? So that remains a big question in my mind, at least in my mind. That maybe some research and see what the meaning of that.
Okay, so we go to 5, Elmo?
Sure.
Okay. One Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. Now he told a parable to those who were invited. When he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person. Then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. When you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Luke.
So, so what would be the meaning of exalt oneself?
To elevate yourself.
Elevate oneself, but the question is, on what basis?
Mm.
What make me think that I am superior than anyone, than others to take the best place on that feast? If it's not pride. If, let's assume, because the truth is, Christ himself, he used Christ himself as an example. He says, I am the son of the man. There is no salvation if not through me. He says things that put himself where he is or what he is. Otherwise, he would be hypocritical, right? So if you go and ask him who is him, or when Ponce Pilate asked him, if he is the king, and said, "Am I king?" Yeah, but my king is not of this world. Did not lie. Did not say he with pseudo humility. But if him in his position take the lowest seat in the house, does it degrade him? Does it make him any lesser? Of course not. And from that position on, he can only move up in the eyes of those present, because in the eyes of God, he is equal. In his own eyes, you know exactly who he is. He is the Christ. And you do not deny being the Christ. But he does not need to show off his position. He does not have to take the number one place in the house, although he deserves to be the number one place in the house, because it does not affect him in any way. And taking the lowest place, he's sitting all the way down there, and somebody asks, who are you sitting here? You're not going to say, oh, I'm the least amongst you. You say who he is. I am the Christ. And for being the Christ, I'm here to serve. For being the Christ, I am here to guide and to teach you. And I'm here to exercise humility as an example, as a teaching to you. So the person who is confident, who is self-assured, they do not need to self-glorify. They do not need to put themselves on a pedestal. They do not say to say, hey, you, get off of the highest place because that belongs to me. It'll be comfortable sitting anywhere because it's self-assured. It knows where he is. It knows where it stands. And it's not by being in that seat on that other seat that will elevate or degrade him, because what he is what he is regardless of where it sits. This is an exercise of humbleness without hypocrisy. And to me, that's very important. The Christ always say, let your yes be your yes and your no be no. So be self-assured. And he never denied that who he was. But to be what he was, And because he's self-assured, he would be in a position of humbleness that would not degrade him in any way. And imagine that it's how difficult it might be for Christ to use the common examples, because this is just a very common example to bring a wedding feast as an example. There is a common thing for the people to understand. Because I assume, I don't know the Jewish tradition from the weddings, but I assume from his saying here that there is a hierarchy placement of individuals, right? Or perhaps like we have in even the Catholic tradition in a wedding, that the family of the bride sit here, the family of the groom sits there, those sit here, those sit there, and there is a division, so to say, of where people are placed. So Jesus used that as an example only. Okay, comments, questions? So let's go.
Okay. 6. Such maxims are consequence of the principle of humility, which Jesus never ceases to lay down as an essential condition of the happiness promised to the elect of the Lord, and which he formulated with these words: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." He takes the child as a type of simplicity of the heart and says, "Whoever humbles himself like this child is the..." Move it up. Is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. That is to say, whoever has no claim to superiority or infallibility. The same fundamental idea is found in this other maxim: but whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And also in this one: whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Spiritism has come to cooperate throughout by providing examples, showing us that those who are great in the spiritual world are those who are small on the earth, and that those who are the greatest and most powerful down here are very small indeed there. It is because at the same time of death, the former carry with them what alone can bring true greatness in heaven and is not lost, namely one's virtues, whereas others have to leave behind what made their greatest on earth and cannot be carried away with them: fortune, titles, glory, noble birth. Having nothing else, they arrive in the other world deprived of everything, like castaways who have lost all world. Having nothing else, they carry in the other world deprived of everything, like castaways who have lost all their belongings, even their clothes, retaining only their pride, which makes them their new position even more humiliating. For they can see above them, resplendent with glory, those whom they had trampled under foot on earth. Spiritism shows us another application of this principle in successive incarnations. Those who have been at the highest position in one existence, but lowered to the last rank in the following existence, if they were dominated by pride and ambition. So do not seek to be at the first place on earth, nor to place yourself above the others. Do not want to be forced to descend. Look, on the contrary, for the most humble and most modest position. God will be able to give you a higher one in heaven should you deserve it.
So when you take all those statements of Christ, but whoever shall be the greatest among you must be your servant, and also all of them, without the understanding of the perpetuation of our life beyond the physical existence, and without the understanding, not the belief, but the understanding of reincarnation as a natural law, it becomes very hard, and personally for me, very difficult to see the truth on those sayings and to accept that as a way of living. And that's why I always say that the humbled, the charitable, who do not believe in God, who do not believe in Christ, are in a much greater position than the most of us, who have a hard time doing so, even with these understandings. And to facilitate us, as we always say, that Spiritism is a tool, is an instrument for us to use for our growth. Spiritism brings those examples of individuals who lived a life on earth in a very humbled, simple, difficult situations. And once they leave the physical body, are recognized as one of the greatest, as one in a good position in the spiritual world. Those who had no power in the physical world, and that power being money, being social position, being nobility, or anything else, find themselves very powerful in the spiritual world as having the power that allows you to be in good place in the spiritual world, which is exactly the exercise of charity, and without humbleness, you cannot exercise charity, as we're going to see we're going to read soon on La Cordière. So Spiritism is this tool that reveals to us the truth of the teachings of Christ. That without it, it becomes, at least for me, very hard to accept that it's okay for me to spend my life here doing the right things, if the opportunity is there for me to move up the ladder in the physical world. If it's given to me the opportunity, I must use that opportunity to conquer the powers that I have over here. And upon having those powers, being money, being social position, being whatever it is, I utilize it without pride, without selfishness, knowing that these are only tools given to me by God to serve the same way that the greatest of all come here and say, as I didn't come to be served, I come to serve. So it's like, if you have the opportunity, I'll say, I don't know, to educate yourself, go to medical school, become a medical doctor, and say, I am here to serve my community. I went through all this hardship, all this hard work to become a medical doctor so I can serve my community. And instead of saying, I went down to all this hard work, but now I'm in a position to make wealth out of it and be in the position of getting the highest seat in the house, for I am a medical doctor. That will be the opposite. That will be the one that perhaps in later in next reincarnations, we will not have those opportunities to reach to that level. Spiritism not only brings the teachings of Christ, but brings example of how the law works, how we are having all the opportunities to learn the importance of humility, of humbleness, which this whole thing of this chapter is teaching us the importance of humility. Comments?
Elmo, I think I'm thinking now of Mother Teresa, and you can think of this beautiful person who was on this planet who gave so much of her humbleness and her work toward those that were in need. This is what I think of what we, you know, whoever exalts himself shall be humbled. I can't think of anyone else that would just, I mean, many more, but with her at mine, I think of her, of all the work she did and had nothing but love and charity in her heart to help those that was so much need. She, if anything, is a great example for all of us, I believe. I don't know.
She is a great example. There are many that well known in history that made the books and the newspapers and become historical figures. But there are many and many who are completely silent, that will not ever be in the newspapers. You never make the history books, and doing exactly what those great ones have done as well. Perhaps in a smaller scales in terms of smaller community that they help, but they are doing this amazing work of devotion, of being a servant and using all the power. And by power I mean intelligence, I mean humility, I mean money, I mean social position, I mean political position, to serve others. You need to be very careful not to limit the act of serving to religiosity only, but understand that each one of us has different attributes. Each one of us have different talents. And when you put those talents to serve others, is an exercise of humility. And that's what Christ is teaching us, not limited only to the religiosity, the religious aspect, but in any field of the all many talents that we all have. The guy with the talent for music, who uses that talent to bring consolation, happiness, relaxation to others, and use that talent with that intention, is a servant of God. In medicine, in engineering, in anything that we do, in the arts. So we have many servants out there who is putting themselves as a servant to serve the community that they serve, and that community may be very small, or maybe very big. And things, they are there. Just yesterday I was listening to blues, and all of a sudden I pick up the phrase on the music that says, life is a lesson, action, and our love is action. And immediately I think of Jesus. And Jesus.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with Jesus at the moment. It was blues, or that more interested in the guitar than anything else. But that caught me right then and there. Life is a lesson, love is action. And I said, oh, that's Jesus right then and there. That person is serving. When they put out that statement of a day for those who are willing to listen, of course, that in itself is serving Jesus, because this is Jesus. His life was a lesson. That's why he has nothing written, right? And love is action. Love is doing things for others.
Well, we see it now, Elmo, in what's going on in the world, right? With pandemic and everything's going on. So many people that are out there giving themselves their all. And just like you said, in the field of medicine in hospitals or whatever, people that are out there serving food and knocking at doors, bringing food. Yeah, absolutely right. There's so many that are doing now. I mean, even now today, even more. So because of the need that's going on in the world. So you see it, you see it in ways that I guess we haven't been conscious of. Now we see it all, and it's a good thing, even if in the sad situation we're going through in a way. But it is good to see. Hopefully, we all do a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think at least those of us here, I mean, we do a little bit of that. I think our problem, at least speaking for myself, is to be more consistent, right? It is to be more consistent is this. It's actually exactly that. And also be careful with expectations towards ourselves, right? I mean, I know no one here has this problem, but it's a problem of us to try to compare ourselves with Mother Teresa, with Chico Xavier, with those who made the books, those who are individuals of history now, because we are not there yet. Let's do our little. Let's just try to be more consistent. And let's try to serve our community with our limitations, knowing that we're going to drop the ball quite a few times, but have the courage to pick it up back again and keep going.
Elmo.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much for the clarification. I never quite understood the phrase, blessed are the poor in spirit. That always seemed to be a weak phrase for me, but now I have a better understanding of it to mean blessed are the truly humble. So thank you very much. Makes more sense now. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think most of us struggles with that statement. That's a very hard one for us. You know, the poor of spirit is a hard to understand. Not only we struggle with that, all of us. I think most of us struggle with understand what did Christ meant by that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, can we continue?
Mysteries hidden from the wise and the prudent. At that time, Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and reveal them to little children. It may seem peculiar that Jesus gives thanks to God for having revealed these things to the simple and the little ones who are the poor in spirit, and for having hidden them from the wise and the prudent, who would be apparently more apt to understand them. This is because we must understand by the first, the meek who humble themselves before God and do not believe themselves superior to everyone, and by the second, the proud, vain of their worldly science, who believe themselves to be prudent because they deny God, treating it as equals when they do not disown it. For during antiquity, sage was synonymous with scientists. This is why God leaves to them the search for the secrets of the earth, while revealing those of heaven to the simple and the meek who bow before the Creator.
Thanks. So chapter 23 of this book is called Strange Morals, right? in which Kardec picks up statements of Christ that almost seems to contradict, or it seems at first glance to contradict his own teachings, right? And there's been examples in chapter 23. And when I read this, I think maybe this passage should be on chapter 23, because to me it seems like contradiction, that God would hide mysteries from, have secrets for the learned and the wise. To me, it seems to be a contradiction even of the moral laws. If our learning is putting knowledge on top of knowledge as little bricks to build a big building, why would things God hide things from the learned and the wise? It seems very contradictory. And later on, Christ is speaking to the disciples and tell them to go and teach, and by he says, but be wise, because we're going to be placed amongst wolves, with sheep clothes. So he says, wait a minute, should I be wise or should I not be wise? If I'm wise, things going to be hidden from me. If I'm not going to be wise, I'm going to be engulfed. They're going to be swallowed by the wolves out there. What do you want from me? Right? So you need to really be careful when you read those things. And that's why I like that chapter of the strange morals, because it clarifies a lot of those things. It seems to me that this statement of Jesus could be in that chapter of the strange models, because it seems to contradict pretty much their own natural laws in itself, in which invites us to be learned and to be wise. But of course, Christ here is making a reference to the learned and wise of the sciences who rejects the the spirituality in itself. The ones who becomes learned and wise to be served and not to serve. The learned and wise who becomes to be in a position of administration to gain power for oneself and not to administer for the people, right? For those, it's not hidden. But it's the analogy that I came to try to make sense of this is there are many doors. And let's assume that all those doors have a key, okay? You would not expect, say, you want to learn this? God say, I'll give you a key, you can open that door. And for you or not, do not give the key. For that, I give the key. For you, I do not give the key, right? Because then there will be preferential treatment, and God would cease to be God. And the natural laws would be a laws of preferential treatment. So it doesn't make sense. So for me to understand this is that there are many doors, and those doors have keys to be opened. We need to mature ourselves. You need to reach a level of understanding to see the key ourselves, pick up that keys and open those doors. The God does not open for us. The God does not hide it from us. It's right there in front of us if we have eyes to see. And to develop the eyes to see, we have to evolve. And in this particular case, you have to evolve in terms of become more humbled. Then we can see it. It might be right in front of us, but you cannot see because our pride hides it from us. So it's not God who hides it from us, it's our own pride. Otherwise, this lesson to me does not make much sense, and to me that's what the explanation of the spirits comes to us. And Christ says, knock and it will be open, ask and it be answered. One must be humbled to ask, and that's why be like a child, because that's what a child does. The question can so much drive us nuts sometimes, but because they are hunger for knowledge, they are hunger for understanding. And you must be humble to accept that we do not know.
Yes.
Therefore, we ask.
Mm.
We have to be humbled to knock. Otherwise, the pride will just try to do it on their own, and will be able not be able to open because they cannot see the key. So I think it's important to eliminate the idea that God blocks all the natural laws, blocks some individuals of getting some, of understanding something, while allows others to do. God does not allow, God does not prohibit anyone. God provides instruments for all of us to gain the ability to pick up those keys and open each one of those doors. For some doors, the key is humility. For some doors, the key is intellectual ability. For some doors, the key will be a different talent, a different virtue that we conquer. But without humility, we would not ask, we would not seek for everything that we know already. Comments, questions? Okay, number 9.
It is the same today with the great truths revealed by Spiritism. Some unbelievers are astonished that the spirits do so little to convince them. This happens because the spirits take care of those who seek the light in good faith and with humility, in preference to those who believe they have all the light and seem to think that God should be too happy to bring them back to itself by their proving that it exists. God's power shines both in the smallest and in the largest things. It does not hide the light under a bushel, since it spreads it abundantly on all sides. Therefore, those who do not see it are blind. God does not want to open their eyes forcibly, since they like to keep them closed. Their turn will come, but not before they feel the anguish of darkness and recognize God. Not chance in the hand that strikes their pride. God uses the means that suited according to each individual to overcome unbelief. It is not up to the incredulous to prescribe to God what it must do, to say to it, if you want to convince me, you have to go about it in this or that way, at such and such a time rather than at that or that other time, according to my convenience. Therefore, may unbelievers not be surprised if God and the spirits that are the agents of its will do not submit to their demands. Let them wonder what they would think if the last of their servants wanted to impose themselves on them. God imposes its conditions and does not submit to anyone. He listens kindly to those who speak Speak to it with humility and not to those who believe themselves to be superior to it.
Yeah, I can read 10 because it's the same topic.
God, it might be asked, not strike them personally by dazzling signs in the presence of which even the most hardened unbeliever would bow. No doubt God could do it, but then what would their merit be? Besides, what purpose would it serve? Do we not see it every day? Certain people refusing the evidence and even saying, if I saw it, I would not believe it, because I know that it is impossible. If they refuse to admit the truth, it is because their spirit is not yet ripe to understand it, nor their heart to feel it. Pride is the veil that obscures their sight. What is the point of presenting light to a blind person? We must therefore first cure the cause of the evil. That is why, like a skillful doctor, God chastises pride first. Therefore, God does not forsake its lost children, for it knows that sooner or later their eyes will open. Yet God wants them to do it of their own free will. So when overcome by the torments of unbelief, they will throw themselves into his arms, and like the prodigal son, ask for mercy.
Okay. So if you start early from the very first revelation, Abraham's slash Moses, right? I think in his both Abraham brings the idea of monotheism. And then with Moses, the more of the revelations with the 10 commandments, but now with one and only God. There was no scientific studies. There was no science basically at that time, right? There was not really palpable evidence. You believe it or you don't believe it. Then come the second revelation with Christ. Now the new paradigm of the Christ of a God loving, just, forgiving, and no longer the punishing God. Here we have some proof, and the life of Christ itself is a proof of it. His return after the physical body is another kind of proof of it, but it's still without any scientific methodology or anything like that. Then comes the third revelation, Spiritism. And now there is a scientific methodology to not only make statements, but to verify, to observe, to research, to basically prove. We being spirits, we being eternal, we surviving after the physical existence, when the physical body dies, the reincarnation, it's all there for us. No one will accept this new truth, those new paradigms, without humbleness. Without humbleness to say, oh, everything that I have believed in, everything that I have thought to be right is not. I have enough evidence here that this is the truth, that this is the right way to go, that this is what leads to better understand of myself, to better understand of why I'm here and where I'm going to. That requires a degree of humility. To leave behind old beliefs, to be like Paul of Tarsus, to accept that new thing. And sometimes requires, and Paul of Tarsus again, this is the analogy of his blindness. to go blind so he can start with a completely new vision, with a completely new set of ideas. He needs to start from zero, basically, and start all over again. That requires an immense amount of humility. So when Spiritism comes, it is not going to be taken by the majority immediately, because we, the majority, are too proud. I mean, too hard for us to completely abandon our old beliefs and accept something new. To accept something that is being rejecting reincarnation after reincarnation after reincarnation, and now say, now I take it, now I see it. It requires an immense amount of humility. And God will not impose anything upon us. Again, the keys are out there. You just have to look for it. You just have to mature and be mature enough to see it, so you can open those doors yourself. I'm not going to open them for you, but I'm not going to keep them hidden from you as well. You do your work and you get up there. And that's the greatest difficulty in Spiritism, is it's really up to us. No one else can do it for us. Okay, and I like when on item 10, when God asks, what would be the merit? Could God impose? Could God, make us believe? Of course God could. God can everything. But there's one thing that God cannot do. God cannot break his own laws. Because if they are perfect, then he would inject something that is not perfect. And perfection cannot make anything that is not perfect. That would be a contradiction. This God would cease to be God, would stop being God. So God cannot impose anything upon us. And if God is absolute perfection in everything, God is the absolute perfection of humility. And humility does not impose anything upon anyone. Humility does not force anything upon anyone. Therefore, God could not make us believe. Could he if you wanted? Well, God is God. God can everything. But one thing God cannot do is go against its own law, because they are perfect. And perfection can only match with perfection. All right. Any more comments, questions?
Elmo, this is Alin.
Hi, Alin.
Hi. So you're talking so much about humility, and it's something that, in keeping with the Spiritist guidance to know ourselves and therefore know our limitations and know where we need to improve. I think that humility, to me, sometimes feels like it could be challenging because of fear. So I feel like pride has a deeper layer that is fear. So in order to protect ourselves from dangers that we don't really know, we become hardened, and then we become proud. But I think that underneath there's fear. I've been saying this. Actually, Julia and I had a conversation about this last year. So I wanted to ask you, would there be a path to humility through vulnerability and courage that would mean more compassion towards ourselves and understanding what prevents us from being humble, instead of just thinking, oh, this is because we're so imperfect and this is our pride. And that feels so hard every time I hear this in Spiritism. And I wonder if there's like, even in Joanna de Angelis, this could be a question for Julio too, teachings where we would find a different path. I don't think that this path of like hardening ourselves and thinking about pride against humility, I don't think that's really working because we're so afraid. So wanted to hear everybody's thoughts on that. Thank you.
But afraid of what?
Afraid of, you know, being vulnerable and being attacked and being, you know, in a situation where we are perceived, humbleness is perceived as weakness.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So I also spoke before of being, yes, self-assurance, self-confident does not go against humility. One does not oppose the other, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But it's, I think the problem is that it's more about weakness. It's very hard to be self-assured and self-confident.
It is.
And then like to get there, I think we stumbled upon the fear of being perceived as weak. So I see that as a kind, almost like an impossibility.
Yeah, and the fear of perception of weakness is in itself a demonstration of our pride.
I think it's the opposite. Sorry. I think that we're so afraid of what can harm us that we present ourselves as proud. But really, I feel like from my interactions, every time I come across a person that's arrogant and proud, they're really afraid of being vulnerable.
I think it could be in both cases. That may be arrogant as a means of hiding their weakness, or they may be arrogant because they think they are strong, because they think they are powerful. We see lots of those cases in our meeting when the spirits come and say, "Do you know who you're talking to? I can crush you with my feet. I can." We see a lot of that, and I think that happens in the physical and the spiritual world as well. That tremendous amount of arrogance and it comes from a pride and a belief of being much powerful than they are, not because they believe that they are as well. But I believe that there is a small number who pretend to be strong to hide their weakness. Those are easy to detect. If you just read between the lines, they will reveal themselves rather quickly. And then comes to the issue of faith in oneself. As I said, if Christ, being the Christ, go to the wedding feast and will sit on the husband, the lowest place, is self-assured that I am Christ, I know who I am, and sitting here does not degrade me in any way. It's not a problem at all for me to be here. And I think that fear is very often a product of ignorance. I always say that. And is exactly what to say, a fear of reveal ourselves, our weakness. But if you are humbled, you're not afraid of revealing our weakness. You are self-assured with your strength and with your weakness. We know who we are and then know thyself. You recognize our strength. You recognize our weakness. We work on our weakness, but you do not have to hide it. We are self-assured of ourselves for everything that we are integral, with the weakness and with the strengths. Otherwise, you are not self-assured.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. It's to become self-assured, and I think you nailed it when you said you have to rely on the faith, right? So if you don't have
Faith in
faith,
yourself, in your potential,
yeah,
not
and
necessarily in a God or in a Christ. Those are wonderful tools for us to use to strengthen self-assurance in ourselves or faith in ourselves. But primarily, this self-assurance and that faith is in ourselves.
having done this work for over 20 years, Elmo, it's so hard because there's so many things that can crush your faith in ourselves.
No, but what are you talking about 20 years? We're talking about 20 reincarnations.
That's true. That I'm aware of, I should have said, like, that I
Okay.
have a memory of.
It's at least 20 reincarnation. You know, Christ bring us to us this new paradigm, the way of looking at ourselves or seeing ourselves, and we are struggling to get there. And it's not you, it's all of us. I mean, who among us will say, yeah, I believe 1% when Christ said that I can do everything he does and much more? Do you really believe that in Christ? Do you really believe that we have that potential? And to tell the truth, I believe because he said,
Yeah.
but I don't see it in myself.
You have to believe because it was him saying, but I don't know.
Right? So you need to do a lot of work to eliminate the fear of showing a weakness. And it's true that perhaps it serves as a self-defense mechanism, that if people see my weakness, they will step on me. But it does not justify being prideful. It actually makes our way much more difficult.
Thank you, Elmo.
I think we have to go deeper into Joanna de Angelis' studies on the inner self, on who we really are, and it's a journey that will take a very long time. It's not something that can be achieved in one incarnation, because as we are still struggling in the worlds of trials and atonements, the process of overcoming our pride and our selfishness, it's a process, that first we have to educate ourselves, and I think that's where we are starting maybe in this incarnation, being aware of what we need to do, but from there to achieving it or becoming part of it, I think it will take many incarnations.
I totally agree, and I think you cannot speak in terms of years, but in terms of reincarnations, and I'm not kidding, I'm serious about that. But I don't think also that it's a very hard science. I think it takes time, but it's not something that requires a tremendous amount of hard work and hardship, because it's a work of subtraction here. It's a work of peeling off of to unlearn things that have been imposed upon us. Like you said, like the very example is, you have to hide your weakness, otherwise people are gonna step on us. That's a very common belief, and everybody goes with that. To peel off that thing, to unlearn that is difficult. To come with a new paradigm, let me reveal my weakness so I can get the help that I need. So others will see my weakness and help me out to elevate myself instead of use that to step on me. That's hard. That's hard. So is the kind of learning that is the moral kind, that is not through addiction, and very often is by subtraction. You have to unlearn those things. You have to remove those contaminations, so to say, from us. And that is the hardest exercise. Just to add is much easier. To remove is much harder. You know, if you have your beautiful white shirt, you know, it's very easy to get it stained. But to remove that stain, it's a hard work. You've got a lot of work to do it.
One more thing that I want to say about this, if you allow me, I will, if it's okay with everyone, I would like to put on the chat the name of someone, an author and a researcher that I've been reading a lot, Brené Brown. I think I may have mentioned her. She works so much with vulnerability and humility, and it's been helping me. That's why I'm asking all these questions, because these are questions that she asks. Is it okay if I put her name on the chat so people
Of
can
course.
see? Okay, thank you.
It's always helpful. Yeah. I think it's important to make sure the self-assurance, faith in oneself, to know thyself and know your strength does not oppose us, humility in any way. Okay?
Continue?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Pride and humility.
15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay. Number 11. May the Lord's peace be with you, dear friends. I have come to encourage you to follow the right path. To the poor spirits who once inhabited the earth, God has given a mission to come and enlighten you. Blessed be God for the grace granted to us of being able to help you with your advancement. May the Holy Spirit enlighten me and help me make my words understandable. And grant me the grace to making them available to all of you incarnate beings who are in pain and seek the light. May God's will help me make it shine in your eyes. Humility is a virtue very much forgotten among you. The great examples which have been given to you are scarcely followed. And yet, without humility, can you be charitable towards your neighbor? Definitely not, because this feeling levels all human beings. It tells them that they are brothers and sisters. They must help each other, and it leads them toward good. Without humility, you have to bring it up. You adore yourselves with virtues that you do not possess, as if you were wearing a coat to hide the deformities of your body. Remember the one who saved us. Remember his humility, which made him so great and placed him above all the prophets. Pride is a terrible adversary of humility. If Christ promised the kingdom of heaven to the poorest, it is because the great of the earth imagine that titles and riches are rewards given on account of their merit, and that their personal essence is purer than that of the poor. They believe that they are entitled to such distinctions. That is why, when God takes them away from them, they accuse it of injustice. What derision and blindness. Does God make a distinction among you based on your bodies? Is not the poor person's physical envelope the same as that of the rich person? Did the Creator make two species of humans? All that God does is great and wise. Never attribute it to ideas that your proud brains gave birth to. O you that are rich, while you sleep under your golden Pavalon, sheltered from the cold, do you ignore the thousands of your brothers and sisters who are worth the same as you are, lying on the straw? Are you not the unfortunate ones who suffer from hunger, your equal? When you hear such words, I know your pride revolts. You may even feel like giving alms to them, but to fraternally shake their hands, never. What? You say, would I, born of noble blood, give on earth, be the equal of this wretch who wears rags? Gain utopia of so-called philosophers? If we were equal, why would God have placed this person so low and me so high? Indeed, it is true that your clothes hardly resemble one another. But if you were both stripped of them, what difference would there be between you? The nobility of blood, you might say. However, chemistry has found no difference between the blood of a grand seigneur and that of a plebeian, between that of a master and that of a slave. Who can guarantee that once you two were not destitute and unhappy like this other person? Have you not begged for alms? Will you not beg for alms one day from the very one that you despise today? Are riches eternal? Do they not end with this body, which is perishable envelope of your spirit? I return your humility on yourself. Finally, direct your gaze on the reality of things of this world, on what makes greatness and abasement in the other. Remember that death will not spare you more than anyone else, that your titles and honors will not protect you from it, and that it can hit you, it can hit you tomorrow, today, this very hour. And if you're buried full of pride, or then I pity you, because you will be worthy of pity.
Thanks. Yeah, it's hard to stop here because the soul message is one and it's very long and brings the same principle, the same idea with the whole thing. But I want to call attention, Alin, for your question over here, with the statement over here, from La Cordière, this from La Cordière. Without humility, you adorn yourselves with virtues that you do not possess, as if wearing clothes to hide the deformities of your body. Remember that the one who serves us. Remember his humility, which made him so great and placed him above all the prophets. When I said that one must be humbled to not hide the weakness, to not fear only one weakness, right? Instead of the contrary, hiding those weaknesses and only showing our strength as a means of present what we are not, in order to preserve ourselves out of fear, or in order to use that as an instrument to be to place ourselves on a higher seat in the wedding feast. And then the one who invites us to say, hey, you don't belong there. You don't belong there because I see the truth of you. I see your entire self, even the things that you are hiding. Please take the lower seat, for this person deserves more of the seat. So there is no need for us to be hiding our weakness. On the contrary, we don't have to be there advertising them to the world as well. But with a little bit of self-assurance and faith, we do not have to hide them as well. We are what we are, accept ourselves where we are, the integral being, you know, with the shadows as well. If you take the shadows from us, what we are now, we are missing a part. It will be missing a part of us. So, and what he does here so far, and if you put in one word, is the recognition of our equality, of being created equal, simple and ignorant, with the common destination, which is our spiritual purification or perfection, if we prefer. For us today to understand that maybe makes a lot of sense. For us in the 1800s, we still with a so strong idea of nobility, of different classes, it becomes a much, much more difficult thing. And even if you face those difficulties today in sense of seeing ourselves superior for many different reasons, if not only nobility being a blue blood, be struggling to make a living but still have a blue blood, or through the color of the skin, or through the level of formal education that you have. I have a degree in this and you don't. There's a many, many, many ways that we shows our pride, and we reject the idea of equality. And all that Lacordia is trying to bring to us is that we are equal regardless. Some of us have greater talent in one thing and another, but all of us have talents, and it is true the application of those talents, those attributes, as a servant, that you make ourselves better, that you make ourselves more productive, that you bring ourselves as human beings and the entire human race to a higher level. Comments? Okay, continue to read. We have 5 minutes left. Does anybody want to comment? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you.
Oh, I thought I got lost.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yep, we're good.
The silence scared me a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should continue read. Yeah. Few more pages. I'll read a little more because it's hard to comment here.
Okay, and you proud ones, what were you before you became powerful members of the aristocrats? Perhaps you were lower than the last of your servants, so bow down your hardened foreheads, which God can lower when you lift them higher. All humans are equal in the divine scale. Virtues alone distinguish them in the eyes of God. All spirits are of the same essence, and all bodies are kneaded from the same dough. The titles and names change nothing. They will remain in the grave, and it is not them that give the promised happiness to the elect. Only charity and humility are titles of nobility. Poor humans, you are parents, your children suffer. They are cold, they feel hunger, and you are going, bow down under the weight of your cross to humble yourselves to get a piece of bread for them. Ah, I bow to you. How noble and holy you are in my eyes. Do hope and pray. Happiness is not in this world. To the poor, the oppressed, and those trusting in it, God gives the kingdom of heaven. And you, young women, poor child, doomed to work, to deprivation, why these sad thoughts? Why cry? Be bowed and serene. May your gaze rise to God. Even to little birds, God gives laughter. So trust it, and it will not forsake you. The joys of the holidays, the pleasures of the world, make your heart beat faster. You would also like to decorate your head with flowers and mingle with the happy ones of the earth. You ask yourself, could you not? Like these women you watch passing by, laughing wildly, be rich too? Oh, stop with these ideas, child. If you knew how many tears and nameless pains are hidden under these embroidered clothes, how many sobs are muffled under the noise of this joyful band, you would prefer your humble retreat and your poverty. Stay pure in the eyes of God. If you do not want your guardian angel to come up to God with face hidden under its white wings, leaving you with remorse, without guide, without support in this world, where would you be lost while waiting for your punishment in the other? And all of you who suffer from the injustices of humans, be indulgent for the faults of your brothers and sisters. Keep in mind that you yourself are not without reproach. This is charity, but also humility. If you suffer from slander, bow your forehead under this ordeal. Why do you care about the slanders of the world if your conduct is poor? It's pure. Cannot God reward you for it? To courageously bear human humiliations is to humble and to recognize that God alone is great and powerful. Dear God, will it be necessary that Christ returns a second time to earth in order to teach humans the laws that they have forgotten? Will he still have to drive out the temple vendors who solely God's house, which should be exclusively a place of prayer? Who knows? O humans, if God granted you this grace, perhaps you would deny it as in the past. You would call him blasphemer because he would lower the pride of the modern Pharisees. Perhaps you would make him take the bath of Golgotha all over again. When Moses was on the Mount Sinai to receive God's commandments, the people of Israel, left to their own devices, forsook the true God. Men and women donated their gold and jewelry to make an idol they adored. Civilized humans, you do like them. Christ has left you his doctrine. He gave you the example of all virtues, but you have abandoned example and precepts. With each of you bringing his or her passions, you made yourself a God at your will. According to some, terrifying and bloody thirsty, to others, a God heedless of the interests of the world. The God you have made yourselves is still the golden calf that everyone approximates for their taste and ideas. Come back to your senses, brothers and sisters, my friends. Let the voice of the spirits touch your hearts. Be generous and charitable without ostentation. That is to say, do good humbly. Let each and every one gradually demolish the altars which you have raised to pride. In a word, be true Christians, and you will have the reign of truth. No longer doubt the goodness of God when it gives you so much proof. We have come to prepare the way for the fulfillment of the prophecies, when the Lord will give you a more dazzling manifestation of his mercy, and that the heavenly envoy will find in you only one large family. May your sweet and humble hearts be worthy of listening to the divine word that he will come to bring to you. May the chosen one find on his path only palms deposited because of your return to good, to charity, and to fraternity. And thus your world will become paradise on earth. But if you remain insensitive to the voice of the Spirit sent to purify and renew your civilized society, so rich in science and yet so poor in good feelings, alas, all that will be left for you to do is to cry and mourn over your fate. But no, this will not be so. Return to God, the parent, and thus all of us who will have the instrumental in the fulfillment of its will shall sing hymns of thanksgiving to thank the Lord for his inexhaustible goodness and to glorify him forever and ever. So be it. Lord Cordier, Constantine, 1863.
Thanks, all right. That was a long reading, but it's almost impossible to break down
Yeah.
because
Yep.
the message is one single message for all of us. 1863.
Mm-hmm.
How current, how contemporaneous is this message? If it's not exactly what we should be reading every day in the morning before we leave our homes and every night before we go to bed, and really ask ourselves, If Christ decides to come back, change his mind and come back, would we recognize the Christ and follow him? And then we have to ask again, if the answer is yes, why does he need to come back to teach the same lessons?
Mhm.
Because if his lessons were perfect, he would not come back and teach a different one now.
Right.
It will be the same lessons. And the lessons are right here, right now for us. And we have the advantage of Spiritism, who removes all the dogmas and all the rituals and present his teachings the most simple, and the good Spiritism will have the hard work of kind of digest it for us, break down it for us easily. So all you have to do now is to swallow it. They did all the chewing for us, basically, to facilitate our understanding, and we still have this difficulty. Does he need to come back? Why?
Yes.
He already came back through Spiritism, fulfilling his promise to send the consoler for us. Why is it so hard for us to accept ourselves as equal? And if we do accept ourselves as equal, why don't we practice it? Why don't you have the same compassion of for those who are being enslaved and abused, as much compassion for those who are astray, doing the abusing and those the enslaving to others? Perhaps those need even greater compassion, but we just are not there yet. We cannot do it yet. And if you keep saying not there yet, then when then?
Mm.
When then? His whole lesson here is we are equal. Because what really matters is the spirit. Because it is the spirit that carries all the moral values. And if the spirit now carries a body that is considered to be by the culture better looking or less looking than others, it doesn't really matter. If you're carrying as instrument physical possessions, we are having the responsibility to use those talents for the good of others, but we're gonna leave it all behind. Because at the end we are all equal. Those are just instruments placed in our hands for the work that is expected from us in this present reincarnation. And when we go back, since they were all equal, we will be equally responsible to demonstrate what have you done with those talents. Did you hide it? Did you multiply it? I think it's 1863, 2020 is equally important. This lesson. Keep asking ourselves, what do I mean by yet? If not now, when? Any comments? All right, somebody want to make the final prayer?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we humbly receive the blessings today through the studies of the Spiritist book. We are grateful to have the understanding of the gospel teachings as we share it together today. May we strive to lessen our pride, our selfishness, and arrogance. May we serve with humility and through our discernment as well. There are many ways to serve. May we each find the unique key to that. The message is know thyself, for we know all things will pass. We take our virtues and development with us when we return to the spiritual world. May we use this time that we have wisely, and may we share these blessings with others. Charity is love in action, and may we be the person to serve in this way. We are truly grateful to have our spiritual benefactors, our loved ones, and the spirit guides to be with us, guiding us, inspiring us, and leading us to a greater harmony and vibration. May we receive the blessings through the love of light in Christ, and may we restore our hearts and minds to a greater inner peace. May we share this with others as we are able to do so. As we close this meeting today, we are grateful for all who have participated. We give thanks for the directors, for the mediums, for the teachers, for the guides, and the blessings of those unseen. We go forth now and continue throughout the week with our prayers, with our studies, and with our mindfulness. We go forth now and humbly ask to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace, so be it.